Alright everyone, we love broken clock videos, don't we? Namely Pete Buttigieg coming out now and saying, well, all drugs should be decriminalized within the United States. We should focus on addiction treatment rather than jailing people. Talk about being late to the party. This has been suggested by people who are maybe more libertarian in their leanings for now decades. It's been more recently suggested by larger groups of people, not just from the far left, but again, certain libertarians, even now some conservatives, for a number of years. In the wake of the Ron Paul revolution era, you could say it's definitely taken on new life as a subject. The idea that the drug war has ever been helpful is wrong. Merely banning things just creates black markets, usually quite a bit of criminal activity. It causes many more problems than it could ever solve. Banning things is dumb, usually. If something is made unavailable through mainline channels, what happens is that the government no longer has any possibility of even trying to regulate that behavior. And then the same central government has created, like the opiate epidemic, the reason why people are strung out all the time, the reason why you have so many millions of people in the U.S. alone addicted to painkillers is because of government. Government didn't bother to look into the cherry-picked, dubious bullshit studies performed by pharmaceutical companies and by the pill manufacturers saying, don't worry, give little Jimmy a whole bottle of Perks or a whole bunch of Vicodin or Oxys or something. Yeah, give him fucking fentanyl lollipops. It's not that bad for you. He has his wisdom teeth out. We need to dope him up for the next week because otherwise he might have a little bit of pain and swelling. Oh my God, it's the most terrible thing ever. How will the human race recover from the existence of pain in the wake of topical surgery? Now, basically, they came out with fudge studies and convinced a bunch of doctors, pharma companies, and people in the government, don't worry about it too much, everything's fine, give people a lot of pills. People who support the drug war fundamentally trust this same government and these same corporations in partnership with the government to stop the problem. I think that's asinine. I think that that's stupid. Treating addiction, first and foremost, and educating people will always be on the forefront of actual sane drug policy. If you make the substances decriminalized so that mere possession is not a criminal offense, go after those that are pushing the materials, jail the pharma executives and the heroin dealers at the same time, give them the same sentence and put them in the same jail cells. I'm sure they trade drugs quite commonly. If you were to actually do that, and try to get people cleaned up, like you do for alcoholics, like you do for people who are addicted to tobacco, and not treat it as some unique social ill that's created by a degeneracy, you'll be far more successful. And we know that this is the case because we've successfully done this with some of the worst substances. Tobacco is considerably more addictive than most drugs of an illicit nature. All of the psychedelics, most of the other drugs with the occasional exception for a couple of opioids, fentanyl and heroin, potentially more addictive than tobacco. Tobacco, though, addiction-wise, as far as the more easily obtained substances, unless you're going into the back street crack alley, is the most addictive. We have driven down the rate of the use of tobacco considerably over the last few decades, partially due to education, partially trying to scare people by showing them, depictions of lung cancer. That can be misleading, but I would say it's for a good cause at least. It's benevolent propaganda after a fashion, and by trying to get people clean by developing ways for them to treat their addiction, by giving them the patch, by giving them gum, Nicorette gum or something. By in some cases they use vaping as a method now. We've managed to get a lot of people free of smoking, and considerable numbers of them free altogether of nicotine. The rate of the use of tobacco products in the United States has dropped like a rock since, anti-smoking campaigns began. This proves that even with a highly addictive substance, something that kills tens of thousands of people a year directly and indirectly, we can stop that and prevent it from being a public health crisis. We can do it. We've proven it because we've actually done so. Why can't we do the same for all of these other drugs? And some of these drugs aren't even addictive. The idea that someone takes LSD and becomes an LSD addict, that's just not the case. It can become habituating at most. Cost-wise, and as far as impairment-wise, The idea that the average person is going to regularly use most psychotropics is clearly purely wrong. The idea that they are significantly toxic in many cases is wrong. That the idea like overdosing on shrooms or LSD. Most people do not have the bank account necessary to overdose on these substances. And in the case that, of course, that was possible, in some cases, physically, it would be very difficult to ingest enough. I'm aware of the fact, and this is the one aside, this is used by authoritarians to try to say drug policy should not be changed. Well, it's hyper scary. Sometimes people jump off a building because they took psychedelics. Well, again, rare, number one. Indicated with pre-existing mental illness, number two. Number three, that tiny number within the population should not inform your drug policy. Drug policy should be geared towards pragmatism. Like our tobacco policy is. Tobacco policy is very pragmatic. There's a tax associated with it. Education takes place, offset by that tax. Basic regulation. We try to get people addiction treatment. You can call up some helpline, quit smoking helpline. We'll give you, the patch for the next month. We'll try to get you off the stuff. It'll be successful for some people. Treating it, though, if we were to switch our tobacco policy today and treat it like the way we treat most drugs and say, well, we're just going to ban people from smoking at all, what would happen is that quickly a criminal element would import cigarettes. It would have tobacco grow operations, and it would fiddle around with them. It would do it because it would then be making money. It would invest in ways to make it more addictive, to keep people from getting clean. It would use other criminal methods to try to do that. We see this with drugs. There are attempts by people like the idea of cutting heroin with fentanyl, which makes it even more addictive and also cheaper, killing a lot of addicts, but also making it so that they can retain their clientele more easily because they're even more strung out, even more fucked up than before. So this is what the drug war has really caused. It's failed completely. Buttigieg is correct. The problem being that sane people have been suggesting this before. Why is this the first time that he's brought this up? And by the way, this is actually better than the rest of the Dem field. Everyone else is half-assing it, including Sanders. Sanders never talks about other drugs, just marijuana. Oh, I think that it should be legal. People should be able to smoke dope. Yeah, they should. They should also be able to shoot heroin if they really want to. And then you get them addiction treatment. The hope should be to treat the addicts, to get rid of the addiction, to get rid of the perceived social crisis. You can't do that while you maintain the illegality of simple drug possession. You simply can't do it. We've been trying for decades now. Throw them in jail, mandatory minimums, mandatory sentencing laws, 3-strike rules, everything under the sun. Kamala Harris's style of hard-ass, prosecutorial leftism is basically put them in jail for a year for simple weed possession, and hopefully it's the only year they spend in jail. And it doesn't work. The reason why there's a public health crisis over addiction over some of these harder substances is largely rooted in government policy anyway. The drug war has made more addicts. Drug policy with regards to perfectly legal substances, pharmaceuticals, lax enforcement of basic safety standards. The idea that the government didn't actually bother to educate itself before making policies with regards to painkillers created that crisis. Government is the problem. By the way, decriminalization is better than legalization. Simply take the laws off the books that make it illegal, and then let people seek treatment if they're addicted. Put more money into addiction treatment and education. Take the money out of policing. The police are safer. They don't have to show up at some basehead's door at 3 a.m. because someone smelled something cooking. It's no longer necessary. Focus on people that would push substances. That includes the pharma CEOs. Fucking throw them in jail. Make an example of them. Put them in the gulag. Put them in the salt quarry. And then be done with it. And by the way, you can never fully eliminate addiction or ODs or people being pain in the ass in public intoxication. There's still, the town drunk still wanders down the street singing sea shanties sometimes. You can't make a perfect society. The best you can get, though, I think, would be with wide-reaching decriminalization and more efforts in education and public health and mental health. The same is true of gun laws. You should rescind most existing gun laws, focus on mental health, and trying to make a society in which people hopefully don't feel the need to shoot themselves or to shoot others. I know that sounds utopian, but it's really the liberals' policies towards these things and the far right's policy towards drugs, admittedly, are the utopian ones. They're not pragmatic. They don't work. The proof is in the pudding. We've got decades and decades of observation that we can look at. That's about all. Peace out.